Now, another issue that affects many, if not all, energy projects, certainly in the renewable sector, is that of permitting reform, the red tape and process that goes along with any major endeavor. We've heard a lot about permitting reform this year in Washington, not a heck of a lot of action. I wonder what makes this, given the bipartisan attention to the issue, what makes it so difficult to really get traction? And can we achieve that net zero goal by 2050 under our current permitting regime?
Yeah, so let's kind of break this down to permitting issues that relate to, hey, people don't want something in their backyard, the kind of historic NIMBYism that exists with all energy resources. And then problems that we've caused through a policy approach or a deployment approach that didn't make a lot of sense from the beginning. In terms of the kind of dealing with folks not wanting stuff in their backyard, I think permitting reform could get us there, and I think inevitably will get us there. But the bigger problem in our industry, Dave, is simply this. We had a bad design from the beginning. And let me spend a moment to talk about this because I think it's something that's really poorly understood, but yet fundamental for us to understand going forward. Our business, I'd like to call it an anything, anywhere, anytime business. Anywhere you want to plug something into the grid, anything you want to plug in, it's got to work anytime. That's the promise we've made to American families and businesses 120 years ago when we started this industry, and it's been part of that throughout the time that I've been in it for the last 25 years. And as we're kind of tackling the green energy challenge, one of the things that we're going to deal with is the reality that if we cover our maximum demand during certain times of the year, for example, where we live, consumers use about 30 or 40% more electricity in the summertime than they do on an average spring or fall day. So as we endeavor to build out a system that is able to cover the peak demand in July and August, then by definition, you're going to have way too much power in April and October. That problem gets compounded if the resources you're adding are resources that operate disproportionately in the fall and the spring, but don't produce necessary energy in the summertime. And that really does describe the wind energy that's been developed in the country. And what we have done is we've sited this in locations where we've massively oversupplied the grid in the fall and in the spring with resources that don't necessarily operate as well during July and August. And that's a problem we've created by effectively saying we want green energy whenever it happens, as opposed to saying, hey, we want a predictable form of green energy that has to be combined with hydrogen fuel cells or storage or other technologies to be deployable when our customers need it to power anything, anytime, anywhere on the grid. And so often your listeners probably hear a company say, look, we've got a factory that's running 3 shifts and we are 100% clean. And your clip of me on the intro here is exactly what I was talking about. So you have a factory in New Jersey and it claims to be 100% clean energy, but in reality, what it's doing is covering its July and August demand with a wind farm that maybe is located in Texas that isn't electrically interconnected to anything in New Jersey. And the wind production is actually occurring in the spring or the fall. And so you don't have either a geographic or time match to that energy production. And a number of our policies rewarded that kind of behavior, which was important in the early days of dealing with the climate crisis. But if we're really going to get anywhere, we need resources that operate when we need them to operate and not put excess power onto the grid, frankly, when we don't need the power. And so the deployment of green energy and the fact that we haven't insisted as a policy matter and a corporate compliance matter that our energy production and consumption be time and geographic matched has created these problems throughout the country where so-called interconnection queues, the people waiting to get permitted to deploy their power onto the grid, are so full that in many instances, the people running the transmission grids have been saying we can't add any resources now and even for a number of years. So as policymakers and customers, we have to start, and members of the general public, we have to start recognizing this important time dimension that's been present since the entire time of our industry. But right now, we have these policies that don't necessarily tackle that as directly as possible. The Biden administration, I give them great kudos. The first thing they did when they came into office is the president issued an administrative order, an executive order, that requires the federal government to time and geographic match its green energy consumption to cover the times it's actually using energy. And we're delighted to have been able to do the first commercial contract with Microsoft a few weeks ago. They are recognized as one of the world's leading sustainability leaders, and they're doing a time matched contract. And that's critically important, I think, going forward.
Yeah.
That'll
But
address the permitting issue.